Here's the claim. Lighting up late-night Reddit threads and whisper-only group chats. A quiet lab pointed a quantum-powered AI at one of the most controversial ancient texts on Earth, the Book of Enoch. And the machine didn't just translate, it surfaced patterns that line up with real cycles in our sky right now. If that sounds like clickbait, good. Healthy skepticism is the survival skill of the internet. But it's also exactly why this story is irresistible, because the pieces that are real make the no way part just plausible enough to keep you watching. First, what are we even talking about? The Book of Enoch, also called First Enoch, is a Jewish apocalyptic work that didn't make it into most Bibles. Preserved mainly in the Ethiopic language and fragmentarily in Aramaic at Qumran with the Dead Sea Scrolls. It's where we meet the Watchers, those sky beings who hand humans advanced knowledge and get hammered for it later. Think origin story meets cosmic courtroom drama written centuries before the Common Era and obsessed with calendars, stars, and judgment. That's not fringe. That's documented literary history. Here's the first non-controversial breadcrumb. Inside that Enoch Qumran world sits a 364-day year. Not a typo, a crisp 52 weeks, 7 days each. Mathematically neat, theologically satisfying, astronomically tricky. Multiple Dead Sea Scrolls lay out versions of that tidy schematic year. And recent scholarly work and reconstructions have highlighted it again in the news cycle. So when people say Enoch is full of numbers, they're not wrong. Numbers are baked into its bones. Now, imagine feeding a text like that into an AI that doesn't just parse words, but hunts relationships across sections, motifs, and meter the way a heat-seeking drone scans a landscape. The crowd-pleasing pitch is simple. The machine finds recurring 7s, 12s, and time markers that look deliberate, like the text was designed to be read in layers. A literary onion. Peel one layer. Theology. Peel another. Star cycles. Peel another. Festival timing. Is that wild? Maybe. But it's not unheard of. Ancient cultures often encoded serious astronomy where people would actually remember it inside rituals, calendars, and sacred language. The Egyptians, for example, used decans, 36 star groups whose risings kept nighttime like a cosmic clock. But does any of that touch the real sky? Or is this just numerology with better branding? Great question. Let's step outside with you for 10 seconds. No, really, because the sky above us is at a lively point in its own rhythm. We're riding solar cycle 25's crest. Forecast windows put the peak somewhere between late 2024 and 2026, and 2025 has already flexed with multiple strong flares captured by NASA. Space weather agencies keep dashboards for this stuff because it matters for satellites, GPS, and even power grids. So, when a storyteller online says, Enoch cycles map to the sun, they're taking a real observable cycle and saying, hey, look, ancient fingerprints. That's a testable claim, not just vibes. Though, until someone pre-registers predictions and nails them in public, it stays in the cool hypothesis bucket. Before we go any further, let's drop the first twist. The quantum part of this circulating story is the least necessary element. Not because quantum natural language processing isn't a thing. There are active surveys and early research, but because the biggest leap forward in machines reading what humans can't already happened without the quantum glitter. In the past couple of years, AI and imaging literally read sealed scrolls from Herculaneum, the Vuvius challenge, by virtually unwrapping carbonized papyri and using deep learning to spot ink textures inside 3D scans. That's not conspiracy. That's peer-watched progress, prize money, and published demos. If a computer can find letters inside a charcoal tube, it can certainly crawl a digitized manuscript to flag suspicious patterns for scholars to vet. The tech is real, even if this exact Enoch quantum headline hasn't been published in a journal. Now, The second twist lands closer to home for archivists than for armchair time travelers. Museums and libraries are way ahead of the average feed when it comes to digitization. The Israel Antiquities Authority's Leon Levy Dead Sea Scrolls Digital Library has used advanced multispectral workflows for years to preserve and share thousands of fragments. The Vatican Library has a long public record of large-scale digitization and preservation planning. Dry, standards-heavy pages that quietly change what's possible for AI to analyze. Translation: the pipes already exist. The scans already exist. Give scholars the green light and you can run serious reproducible tests on claims like every seventh section nods to judgment without hand-waving. So, what would a responsible AI found a code in Enoch story look like if we stripped away the hype? Start with pre-registered predictions. For example, using only the calendar logic described in a 364-day scheme, we predict peaks in metaphor-heavy language that correlate to known seasonal astronomical transitions. Then test across manuscripts, then test across different corpora to check false positives, then publish the negative results along with the sexy charts. If the pattern survives that gauntlet, now we're talking. But you didn't click for a dissertation. You clicked for the goosebumps. So here's the part the internet loves to argue about. Is Enoch just mythology? Or is it memory? A knowledge vault wrapped in sacred story so it would survive fires, kings, and time. Take the travel sections where Enoch walks past strange columns of fire and chaotic boundary places. One literalist reading is vision, but cue your inner field guide. There are places on Earth like Turkey's monumental Göbekli region where prehistoric ritual architecture and dramatic geology live in the same neighborhood. Imagine mapping Enoch's poetic stage directions onto Anatolia and the northern Levant, dropping pins on highlands and trade routes and then asking what geological features here would have looked like the edge of the world to someone 2 millennia ago. That's not proof. That's a thought experiment with a map, and it forces better questions instead of easy answers. Here's where the video shifts gears and keeps your brain guessing. Hidden layers don't have to mean futurealing. They can mean cultural time capsules. Across traditions, sacred calendars often smuggle in practical timing, agriculture, pilgrimage, fasting cycles because you remember what you rehearse. So if you spot every 7th X or every 12th Y, you're not necessarily discovering a prophecy. You might be uncovering a mnemonic. Whether it's the Egyptian deacons pacing out the night or a schematic 364 making festivals land on the same weekday forever. The point is continuity. The wow isn't they predicted 2025. The wow is they engineered memory. Still, let's dance with the spicier version for A. Whose metaphors, heaven shaken, stars fall, luminaries afflicted, statistically spike around sections that line up with a long-term rhythm. You could test that against modern space weather data. If the correlation survives time-shifting in controls, we're in, interesting territory. If it crumbles, we learn something about our own pattern-hungry brains. Either way, the test is healthy. Space weather is in the news because it's tangible. 2025 has already delivered multiple strong flares, and it legitimately impacts Earth tech. That's a rare sweet spot where an ancient text's favorite metaphors and a modern dashboard share a language of storms. Now, let's talk ethics because every good mystery has a moral spine. In Enoch, knowledge comes with accountability. The Watchers hand humans tools, and the fallout is messy. You don't need angels to get the lesson. Swap in today's acronyms. ICRISPRLLMS. You name it. And the ancient warning reads like a boardroom memo. Innovation without guardrails char-royals trust. That's why the sober version of this story matters more than the flashy one. If ancient compilers did bake cyclical warnings into sacred narrative about hubris, about cycles of boom, bust, about sky tantrums we barely understand, then the smartest thing we can do is resist the dopamine rush of Enoch predicted X and ask what responsibility comes with decoding old knowledge with new machines. Time for a counterargument because you deserve one. Could we just be hallucinating structure? Absolutely. Humans find faces in toast. Scholars even have a word for it. Apnea. Sacred literature is dense by design, and if you write a script long enough, you can make any number look prophetic. The antidote is boring and beautiful. Methods. You test your pipeline on control texts with similar age-length genre and see if the same miracle pops up. You let adversarial teams try to debunk you and publish those results, too. And you keep the words quantum AI out of your mouth until you have something that survives peer review without the glitter. But here's the motivator to keep going down this rabbit hole. The tools to do it right are finally here. Library vaults are becoming data sets. Scrolls that crumbled under fingers now bloom under multispectral light. Image stacks become matrices. And AIs, quantum or not, are really good at first-pass triage. Hey human, look here. The Vuvius challenge didn't just win headlines. It set a template for how to stage open, testable, data-driven challenges around ancient texts. Enoch won't be the last manuscript to meet a machine. It might be the most polarizing. Let me plant one last wait what beat before we land this plane. The Enoch world isn't only Enoch. There are related fragments like the Book of Giants that expand the Watcher's narrative in different communities and languages. Tie that to the reality that archives sometimes miss shelf fragments for decades. That new imaging can resurrect letters invisible for centuries, and that digitization puts once restricted materials in reach of global teams. And you get a future where the missing chapters meme isn't just a trope. It's a workflow problem we might actually solve, as long as we keep hype on a leash and data in the sunlight. So, where does that leave the headline you came for? Here's the honest version. There's no public peer-reviewed paper announcing that a quantum AI decoded Enoch and predicted this year's sky. What we do have is a perfect storm of ingredients that make that kind of story feel just one embargo away. A text obsessed with time. A verified 364-day schematic year. Living solar cycles making auroras dance at odd latitudes. Scanners and cameras that see ink before eyes do. And AIs trained to spot needles in manuscript hast stacks. The distance between "you'll never believe this" and "here's the preprint" is shorter than it's ever been. But it's still a distance we need to walk with receipts. If you've ever felt like the grown-ups in